Delmarva Discovery Museum. My name is Christine, and I am a volunteer here at the museum. We're about to start the third part of our tour of this large exhibit hall that we call the Life by the Waterfall. The exhibits in this hall explore some of the many ways that the waterways of Delmarva have shaped the livelihoods, the foodways, the traditions, and the pastimes of the people who live here. Today we're going to look at two exhibits that explore two of the long traditions on Delmarva, that of waterfowl hunting and that of decoy carving. Because of its location between the Delaware and Chesapeake Bays, Delmarva abounds with a large variety of migratory and resident waterfowl. Now, these birds have always been an important food source for the people who live here, but with the improved transportation in the late 19th century, there arose a robust market for these birds in the large East Coast cities such as New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. Now, market hunting, or market gunning as it was called, became an important livelihood for many of the folks here on Delmarva. In order to meet the growing demand for these birds, these market hunters devised a number of tools and techniques that allowed them to harvest as many birds as they could in one day, up to hundreds of birds in one day. One of those devices you see right behind me. This strange looking boat is called a sink box. Now with its very heavy ballast decoys on these wings, this boat would sit down at water level in the water. It would allow the hunter who lay down in the center there to sneak up on a floating flock of waterfowl, or to set himself up surrounded by decoys, camouflage as part of this flock of floating waterfowl to attract waterfowl flying in, and then they could shoot as many birds as they could at one time. Now, the market hunters also had a number of other devices. For example, they used lights at night to illuminate and blind the waterfowl as they hunted them. They used traps. They used live decoys. They used lots of bait, of course. And they also used large guns called a punt gun, which is a cannon-like gun that could shoot multiple birds with one shot. They also used large sets of carved decoys. Now, the sale of waterfowl was prohibited by the Migratory Bird Act of 1918. But the tools of the market gunners continued to be used by sports hunters, especially those hunters who were members of the many hunt clubs that were established across Delmarva. In the 1930s, however, regulations were passed that strictly regulated the hunting of waterfowl and outlawed almost all of the market gunners' devices, with the notable exception of carved decoys. But those of you who know Delmarva and have been around Delmarva in the fall know that waterfowl hunting remains an important industry and pastime for the people who live here. Let's take a closer look at the decoys that were used by the hunters on Delmarva. The use of hunting decoys was probably universal among hunters worldwide. We know for a fact that Native Americans made models of waterfowl out of reeds such as this to attract their prey. But nowhere did the practice of using decoys flourish as it did among the market gunners and the later sports hunters of Delmarva. Follow me into the shop. The early decoys were made by the hunters themselves out of whatever material they had available to them. This one was made out of cork, this out of wood, this is canvas-covered wood. These early decoys showed little artistry or craft. But over time, some decoy carvers specialized in their craft. Among the most famous carvers on Delmarva were Lem and Steve Ward of Crisfield. Priding themselves on the accuracy of their creations, they called themselves waterfowl counterfeiters rather than decoy carvers. Because of the demand for decoys from the numerous hunt clubs and the continued popularity of sports hunting on Delmarva, the art of decoy carving thrived here. For generations, Chesapeake carvers carved decoys that now are considered works of art. Waterfowl hunters today still use decoys, but these decoys are manufactured in a factory and they're made out of plastic. But the craft or the art of decoy carving spawned what is the only truly American art form, that of wildfowl carving. Some contemporary carvers still carve functional decoys, but most carve wildfowl as opposed to waterfowl of all kinds, in all settings, and in all sizes. But all of the contemporary carvers draw on the skills, the techniques, and the spirits of those original decoy carvers. This concludes our tour of the Life by the Water exhibit hall in the Delmarva Discovery Museum. We've seen some of the ways that the waterways of Delmarva have shaped the lives of the people who live here. And we've seen how the livelihoods and traditions of Delmarva are so intertwined, how the distinctive workboats of the Chesapeake were designed to meet the needs of the oystermen, and how the market gunners' functional hunting tools gave rise to a traditional craft and a modern art form. Thank you for joining me today, and if you're watching this online, we hope to see you in person in the museum in the very near future. Thank you very much.